Hello, good morning. Welcome to the 2021 San Diego Innovation Showcase. We're going to give it a minute to allow for participants to log in and be able to join us, and we'll get started momentarily. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the 2021 San Diego Innovation Showcase. My name is Ruben Flores Saib, and I'm the current president and one of the co-founders of the San Diego Innovation Council. I am very excited about the great lineup of speakers and startup presentations that we have prepared for you today. I am particularly thankful to San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria for his upcoming participation later in our program, with a video welcoming all of you and sharing his perspective on San Diego as an innovation community. Thanks to your participation, each of you, we have been able again to convene startups, investors, entrepreneurs, companies, and top-notch experts in technology commercialization from the US, Germany, the UK, and Latin America. I want to specifically thank all of those startups who will be presenting later today. Thank you for making this another stellar showcase. I encourage all of you to use the Whova app or desktop application to connect with all other attendees. Our goal is to provide a platform to facilitate connections and help support each other's goals in moving innovations to the marketplace. I also want to thank our sponsors, without whom this event wouldn't be possible. Barash Law, Wilson Sonsini, and JLabs have provided the necessary support for the Council to be able to put together this event. Thanks again to each of them for their renewed support and commitment to the academic innovation ecosystem. Before we get started with our success examples, I want to take a couple of minutes to share a few thoughts about the San Diego Innovation Council and its mission and vision. The SDIC, as we call it, was formed over 3 years ago as a 501c3 nonprofit organization comprised of a working board of directors, including a majority of members who work in what we call technology transfer at universities. Together with industry members and community members at large, the board organizes and actively manages this showcase and other events through the year. A fundamental component of the council are the supporting community organizations in San Diego and Southern California, which are involved in supporting startup growth, like Tech Coast Angels, Connect, the Alliance for Social Innovation, the Port of San Diego, Evonexus, and many others listed in our website. Thank you all, our supporting organizations who help us achieve our mission. At the San Diego Innovation Council, our mission is to provide a platform for collaboration with the region's premier research institutions and to facilitate and showcase innovation and commercial successes. Our vision is to elevate San Diego as a premier location for world-class research and entrepreneurship. We achieve our mission and vision through our 3 C's: communicating, connecting, and cultivating academic innovation and technologies. As members, we communicate the impact and value of San Diego-based research organizations and promote events supporting the commercialization of academic innovations. We connect stakeholders and representatives from the community to support one another and, when possible, align efforts for promoting San Diego as a world-class destination for academic-based innovations. I invite you to visit our website at sdic.org to learn more about our organization and stay connected for future events. Finally, I want to recognize our board members for the direct, non-compensated, hands-on involvement in preparation of all aspects of today's program. They all have worked very hard to make sure you have a productive experience today. I also want to take 30 seconds to reflect on what 5 years of the Innovation Showcase mean personally and to me, and to see its impact in the community. I still remember in 2017, after the first showcase, when Paul Robin at UCSD told me, well, you've done what has not done before in San Diego. You've been able to bring together all the major universities and research centers to collaborate. Well, the truth is I was merely a catalyst for what was already there. I happened to personally know the heads of all tech transfer offices and was able to work with them to find a format and path to work together in which the rising tide rises all the boats. After my departure from UCSD, I joined USC for a couple of reasons, including to be able to continue to work on the Southern California academic innovation environment. So on its fifth installment, the Council and the Showcase continue to grow and achieve its mission and vision. Let's get started. Our first part of the program is the presentation of success stories. We started the program in this manner to shine a spotlight on precisely the reason why we do this. We all are inspired and want to learn from those like our presenters, Nick and Zach, who have traveled the path and been able to learn, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and be able to succeed in their entrepreneurial journey. So we're going to start with Nick from the CEO of OcuSpace. And I'm going to ask Nick to go ahead and introduce himself and tell us his story. At the end, after Nick's and Zach's presentation, we will have time to answer questions. Please go ahead and get started, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruben. It's good to see everybody. I'm Nick Halverson, CEO of OcuSpace. And I have to admit that when I was asked to do this presentation, I was hit with two emotions right off the bat. The first emotion was just complete excitement and like what an honor this is. I remember just a couple of years ago, I was asked to do a breakout session for the same conference. And that was a huge milestone for OcuSpace and for my career. And I was so excited about that. And now to be helping open the conference is just a huge honor. But then the second emotion that hit me was a little bit of that, self-doubt that creeps in that says, wait, success stories? Is that OcuSpace? Are we successful? We haven't even been acquired. We haven't even, we don't have X dollars in investment. We haven't hit X dollars in revenue yet. And I really have to, thank the SDIC, not just for this opportunity to share our story, but also for forcing me to look back on OcuSpace's 5-year journey and see the progress we've made over the last 5 years, the progress we've made over the last 18 months, the progress we've made over the last 3 months, because I think myself and probably a lot of founders out there, it's so easy to be stuck in the day-to-day all the time and to not see the success and not feel the success. I think if you asked me, a couple of years ago, it's like, oh man, if I just have 10 employees, we'll be able to do anything. And then we get 10 employees, and it's, oh, no, that doesn't mean anything. We need 25 employees, and then we'll be able to do anything. And you're always pushing the goalpost back. You're putting success, you're putting happiness on the horizon. And it's so easy to just, always push that away. So I want to invite any of the founders out there today to take a second, always stop, acknowledge the progress that you've come, acknowledge all the success, and actually enjoy that. I know it's easy for myself and for a lot of other people to always want more and more. And so this is advice I need to follow myself, but I wanted to just share that experience. And thank you, Ruben, for forcing me to reflect on our progress. With that, I will jump into a little bit of our history and our journey that we've had. So I started OcuSpace 5 years ago. What really inspired me to start the company was walking around beautiful Geisel Library at UCSD in my junior year as an electrical engineering student. And I was just trying to study for my midterms. And I was going up and down 8 floors, walking around, looking for a place to study. And I couldn't find any open seats. And I literally stopped after about 20 minutes and I said, I wish I knew how busy every floor was before I came. And that was kind of the light bulb that went off. And I was like, wait, this is actually really useful. This would be cool if I knew how busy this is. And if I can know how busy traffic is, and I can do FaceTime, and I can do all this stuff, why can't I know how busy a place is? And so I went home to my roommates, Max and Linus, and I told them, like, guys, like, we can figure this out. I know we can. We've got some ideas on how we could do it. I don't know how we get there, but let's start thinking about it. And so we had ideas, but we really didn't know the direction we wanted to go. And so that's when we started to look for some other folks around us, some help. And we applied to UCSD's The Basement, the Brink at USD, the Southern California Energy Innovation Network, and Clean Tech San Diego. We did different pitch contests that gave us a little bit of funding. And what was really important about all of that was not just, you know, getting the advice, getting some capital to start us going, but really to build confidence. If we didn't get people like Paul Robin at The Basement at UCSD to tell me, hey, this is actually a good idea, you guys should continue to do this, we may have just stopped right there. So step one in our journey was figuring out who around us can actually help us do this, and hearing some people tell us that this was a good idea. So I can't thank The Basement, UCSD, the Brink, Scene and Clean Tech San Diego, and everybody else enough for giving us that initial boost of confidence to get us going and get us off the ground. Once we had a little bit of that advice and a little bit of that capital, we looked to actually solve the problem that we set out to solve. And we're thinking about the different ways we could count how many people are in a space anonymously and passively and report that in real time to students on campus. And what we found was that there's a couple different things, different barriers we had at that stage. We were students in college. We didn't have a lot of money. We had a little bit of prize money, but not a lot of money. We knew that UCSD was going to be really helpful to be a proving ground for us and prove our concept, but they weren't going to be spending thousands of dollars doing infrastructure changes in their buildings to rewire things to help us out. So we had to build a solution that we could afford to buy, that didn't take any infrastructure changes in the library, and also that was very privacy friendly, because we were college students and we were on a college campus, and we knew nobody was going to put up with anything that was privacy invasive. And when we were going about trying to find the solution, there was nothing out there to do this. And so we had to really innovate and develop a solution that had never been done before. And we ended up taking Bluetooth and Wi-Fi signal data and analyzing that through AI algorithms that we developed, and understanding this is how many people are in the space, this is how people are moving about, and doing that all in a low cost, easy to deploy, and privacy safe way. And one thing that I want to stop and mention at this point is I remember pitching an incubator early on, and an electrical engineering professor that was on the board of this incubator was telling me, this was after we had launched at UCSD, he was telling me that what I was saying we could do was impossible. He's an electrical engineering expert, a professor for years and years, well respected. And he's like, no, you guys can't be doing this, it's impossible to do. And that was really discouraging and a little frustrating at the time, because we were doing it. I said, walk guys the library with me, I'll show you all the data, we're counting the people accurately and estimating it. And I look back on that moment now, and I think that those original barriers that we had really shaped the product. And those have become the biggest differentiators that have really helped us succeed now. And getting past those barriers is what forced us to innovate and be the first people to ever do what we've been able to do. And it's kind of a little bit of a badge of honor if an expert in the industry tells you what you're doing is impossible and you know that you're doing it, then I think you're onto something pretty good. So once we had finally developed the technology that could just plug into an outlet, scan for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi people, and accurately estimate Wi-Fi signals and accurately estimate people in the space, we went to actually launching the product at UCSD. And we launched the Waits app, a free app for students to download so they could see how busy every floor Geisel was, REMAC and Main Gym, Price Center, the dining halls. We even integrated the data onto a digital sign at UCSD on Geisel Library at the front. So when students came in, they could see how busy all the different floors were. And it was incredible, the reception that we got when we launched this. We made one Facebook page, or one Facebook post, and we got 5,700 students to download our app on the first day. And I didn't even know what was going on. We were so excited. It was good good to see that I wasn't the only impatient kid on UCSD's campus, and good to see that other people were responding to what we built. It was a really exciting time, but at the same time, we didn't know what this really meant for the business. We didn't think about this as a business. We just thought about this as solving our own personal pain point. But then a couple weeks later, Gary Matthews, Vice Chancellor of Resource Management and Planning at UCSD, called me up and he said, Nick, how do you have all this data on our buildings on campus? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get expelled right before I graduate. This is terrible. I'm sorry. And he goes on to tell me, look, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year in new construction and renovations on UCSD's campus. And we don't have a ton of data to drive those decisions or measure that success. We would love to expand you across hundreds of different locations on campus and help us improve how we spend our capital here at UCSD. And so not only did UCSD become our incubator in the basement, not only did they become our test bed to prove our concept and our technology, but they became our first customer. I don't know how many startups, how many students can really say that. And I'll be forever grateful to UCSD and everything they've done. And Gary and Aluth, they'll be in my will someday probably, because I can't thank them enough. I really appreciate everything that they've done. And one thing that Gary said to me really stuck in my head, talking about how with the physical spaces he was managing, he didn't have a lot of data. And that got me to thinking about a broader problem, in that I would never build a website or an app without putting some analytics on it and understanding how many visitors do you get, how long do they stay, what do they click on. And I can get all these analytics for websites or apps, and I can optimize the customer experience. I can change things to get a better outcome for what I want. But when you're dealing with physical spaces, you don't really get any of that data. You get, anecdotal data from managers, you get limited data, old data, distorted data. And so we really started to think about, how can OccuSpace actually bring the power of web analytics to the physical world? And that really became our mission early on at OccuSpace. And now more recently, that mission is a little bit more targeted and focused towards brick and mortar in the retail space. And what we've been able to build around that is really to fill that original goal, to bring web analytics to the physical world and fill that in-store data gap that people have. And we can not only tell them how many visitors they're having, but the conversion rates, the average customer dwell time, heat maps, passerby foot traffic, all these different data points we're beginning to really build and execute on and fulfill that vision that I think Gary originally sparked in my head. And so it's really exciting what we're starting to be able to build with our customers. But I will tell you, the journey was not that smooth as I make it out to be here. It was quite a winding road. And so I think one of my biggest mistakes early on in starting OccuSpace was, I thought you start a company and you see all these success stories where just you go straight up and everything works out. But that's not how it goes in the real world. There's lots of ups and downs, and it takes a lot longer than you might think, at least for most people, at least for me. And so in 2018, we proved our concept. We got our initial seed investment, and we said, hey, we have UCSD. They became our first customer. This seems like this could work. They like it. Let's go after universities. And so that became our main focus. We went after universities. We scaled up to well over a dozen universities over the next year, 2 years. But what we found was the growth just wasn't really fast enough. It was still going well, but we felt like there was bigger opportunity in other verticals and with other customers. And so only 3 months ago, we made the decision to really stop our university focus and our university expansion. And we actually told 11 universities that wanted to launch with us this fall that they were going to have to wait a whole nother year, and we would go live with them in fall of 2022. And this was one of the hardest decisions we've ever made as a company. And I think that you read all these books and you listen to all these podcasts that tell you to make data-driven decisions, to build your MVPs, to iterate, and then kind of the clear decisions will become obvious and you choose that route. But in the real world, it really doesn't happen that easily. You have tons of people inside the company, tons of investors and advisors telling you, no, like this is what we know and this is what we should be building, and we've proven that we can do this. Why would we leave it and go to something that's less known? But sometimes when you're looking at building a company, you can see that you don't have enough resources to do everything. You've got to be focused. And sometimes you have to make bets that you don't necessarily have all the data you want. But I think I would encourage all the founders to follow your gut, look at the data as much as you can, but nobody knows your product better than you, and to trust your gut. And we made that focus 3 months ago to shift and focus on retail and de-emphasize universities. And in that 3 months, we've over doubled our total revenue as a company in our entire company's history. And so we've gotten into big name retailers like CarMax and T-Mobile, and locked in a huge partnership with Fusion 92, and launched with Everbull, a San Diego-based company that's helped us tremendously prove out what we can do in brick and mortar. And so the journey is full of ups and downs, but I would encourage every founder to trust your gut. Sometimes you're going to have to make hard decisions that you don't want to make, but once you make it and you commit your team and you get focused in that direction, things will really start working out for the better. I can almost guarantee that. The team that we've assembled at OccuSpace, it's pretty crazy to think about that just 18 months ago, it was still Max, Linus, and I, the three of us working OccuSpace part-time, and then part-time still doing things like delivering Amazon packages and working for Uber to pay the bills and get by. And in just 18 months, we've expanded the team to 15 full-time employees. And we're definitely a fully remote company. We have people all over the country, but we do make an effort to get back in person once every quarter for an all-hands retreat. And you can see that we've hired a couple people since our last retreat, but I'm really good at Photoshop, so you probably can't tell which ones they are. But we're growing pretty fast. And I just have to give a huge shout out to this team. No founder can build a product by themselves. Nobody can develop a company and a solution by themselves. It takes a lot of great people to really become invested and put blood, sweat, and tears into this company. And I'm so honored, thankful, blessed to have such an awesome team around us. So that's something that's really exciting. And sometimes as a founder, you don't know how you're going to attract all this talent, but when you do, you're just grateful for it. And so big shout out to my whole team and what we've been able to accomplish so far. I can't get through this presentation without focusing on San Diego and our whole journey. I've already talked about UCSD. We probably wouldn't be a company without UCSD. We've had folks like The Basement and The Brink and Scene all help us so much. But there's even more than that around that's helped us become who we are today in San Diego, with all the different investors and advisors we've gotten from San Diego, from Brian Snow and Impala Ventures, Ford Blakely, Liz Gasser, Chaz Worster, Jeff Weiss, Doug Holte, and so many more people I'd love to have on here, but couldn't fit them all. There's a ton of great, talented, accomplished people in San Diego that are so willing to help hungry founders and startups, figure out their path and give them guidance and help me avoid a lot of the common pitfalls that you don't see coming when you're a young first-time founder. And so I just want to give a big shout out to the San Diego startup ecosystem, everything you're doing at, SDIC and San Diego Startup Week and everything that's going on here. It's made a huge difference. It's made the difference in us becoming a successful company. And I'm so grateful for our advisors that we have. And also the different customers that we've had from San Diego Connections to the UCs, to Everbull, to big companies like Sodexo, Compass, PwC, CBRE, all things that we've gotten from our San Diego roots. It's just been pretty incredible to see that. And I couldn't leave out the places that shaped OccuSpace. Oscar's Tacos down in PB. This was the first place that I realized OccuSpace would be useful outside the university vertical. They have a killer deal, Mondays to Thursdays, 1 to 5, $1 fish tacos. And I would take advantage of that deal religiously. But the problem was it got so popular that there was a line out the door every day. And I would come, and because I was an impatient person, I would then leave and then be pretty frustrated. And I said the same thing I said at Geisel. I wish I knew how busy Oscars was before I went. And that's when I realized that we could have a lot more applications besides just universities. And Bon Thai, best Thai food in the world. Max Linus and I moved into a small apartment, a small little house in University Heights right after we graduated. It was the hacker house, and we spent all day working on OccuSpace. And the only time it seemed like we left the house was to go to Bon Thai and get some great Thai food. And so that's something that's imprinted on my memory. To Pal Joey's, the best dive bar in the world, where when we did have an office in San Diego, it seemed like every other night we'd look up and it would be 10, 11 p.m. We'd all be working hard, and we'd take the team to Pal Joey's and relax, forget about work, enjoy each other's company, and love to listen to Max do some hardcore death metal karaoke there at Pal Joey's. I apologize to everybody who was there for those shows, but there's these places, these customers, these people, so many things in San Diego that I'm incredibly grateful for, that really, I can honestly say we would not be a company today. We would not be where we are without being started in San Diego and getting all the help and guidance. So thank you to everybody here. And thank you for the opportunity to share our story. And our story is definitely far from over. So hopefully here in another year, another couple of years, I can give the update on where we go from there. But thanks, Ruben. I'll give it back to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Nick, for making this story and this journey, very personal, very relatable. We love to hear, what are the human aspects that make it possible to succeed, and what are the human aspects that become challenging. I have some questions that I want to ask you after Zach's presentation. I'm particularly interested in that encouragement and discouragement that you got. But we're going to move on to Zach's now. And at the end of Zach's presentation, we'll have time to answer questions from any of the attendees, and we'll have a chat a little bit. So without further ado, please welcome Zach Hornby, who is the CEO of Boundless Bio. Zach, please take it away.
Ruben, thank you very much. And Nick, really fascinating to hear your story. It's great to hear. It truly is a San Diego success story. And I'm also proud that Boundless Bio is also very much a homegrown San Diego story. And of course, you can all see my background here from Torrey Pines, looking down on the preserve there. And this is pretty much where Boundless Bio is located and where we were founded. So the origin story of Boundless Bio starts with a gentleman, a physician and researcher named Paul Michel, who actually lost his father to cancer at age 14, and it had a profound impact on Paul and shaped where he has taken his life. He's been very motivated to research cancer and try to understand what are some of the fundamental drivers and how we can develop even better medicines to help improve the lives of patients with cancer. Paul obtained an MD degree as a pathologist and started his career at UCLA, both as a pathologist, but then eventually as a translational researcher. He later moved to San Diego in 2012, where he held an appointment as a professor at UCSD, as well as at the Ludwig Cancer Research Institute from 2012 until 2021. And then earlier this year, he obtained a very prestigious appointment at Stanford University. But during his 9 years here in San Diego, Paul was very interested in certain aggressive cancers like glioblastoma and other malignancies, in trying to understand why they weren't responding to specific standard of care therapies like targeted therapies. And one of the things that Paul observed is that as these tumors were becoming resistant to things like targeted therapies, their genomes seemed to be adapting very rapidly. In fact, so rapidly that it could not be explained by normal Mendelian genetics. And so Paul, with his pathology background, looked very carefully at the cancer cells and their nuclei and their genomes. And what he observed is that there were certain tumors that are driven by something called oncogene amplifications, where there are far too many copies of a normal gene, and that causes growth of the cells. And normally you try to treat this kind of mutation by inhibiting the protein product of these oncogenes. But Paul observed that when you applied such inhibitors, the amplifications were actually disappearing and being potentially replaced by other amplifications or other adaptations. And Paul was trying to figure out how that was possible. And what he realized was that these gene amplifications were not occurring where we might expect based on the human genome map and where certain genes are supposed to be located on various chromosomes. But instead, he saw that in cancer cells, there was a separate genome or aspects of the genome that did not reside on chromosomes, but instead resided on little circles of DNA that were physically distinct from the chromosomes, but still resided in the nucleus. And these little circles of DNA, which are called extrachromosomal DNA or ecDNA, it was these that were fluctuating and changing very rapidly during mitosis and allowing genetic heterogeneity and therefore fitness advantage, adaptability, and eventually evolution of the tumor cells. And it was these little circles that was driving resistance to standard of care therapies. So Paul was investigating this work biologically in the lab. He was also working with a colleague at UCSD named Vineet Bafna in the computational biology group. And Paul was friends with another distinguished academic researcher here in town named Ben Cravatt, who is a professor at the Scripps Research Institute. And Ben is a serial entrepreneur. Being at Scripps Research Institute, he'd worked alongside people like Pete Schultz, who had founded many companies here in town. And so Ben, too, had discovered several successful companies, one called ActiveX, another called Abide, most recently a company called Vividian that was recently acquired by Bayer. And so Paul was friends with Ben, and Paul would discuss his science with Ben. And, at one point said to Ben, I think we're really on to a new discovery here in the area of cancer biology, and I think the implications are pretty big, but there's only so much we can do in the academic setting. Ben, because you have formed multiple successful biotech companies, do you think this science could be the basis of a new company formation? And Ben said, yes, I think there is sufficient substrate here. I think there could be a company here, but let me introduce you to some trusted venture capital investors who helped me found Vividian, for example, and let's see what they say. So Ben brought Paul to the folks at Arch, and they presented the science that Paul had been working on and had published in journals such as Science and Nature. And the partnership at Arch, led by Christina Burrow, along with a venture partner, Keith Lendon, they immediately recognized the importance of Paul's biology discoveries in cancer biology and the potential implications for new therapeutics. So in late 2018, they decided to found the company that is now Boundless Bio. And Arch initially seeded the company with $5 million seed investment with the goal of assembling a business plan around Paul's work and licensing some core intellectual property out of UCSD. So in late 2018, this company was formed, and it was being incubated virtually out of Arch's Bay Area office. It did not have an actual physical location here in town, nor did it have any full-time employees, but various people in the Arch network were helping getting it off the ground. So I'm going to pause the story there and then tell you my background and how I then intersected this nascent company. So I've been working in biotechnology for the past 20 years, and I've been in San Diego the past 16 years. During business school, I did a summer internship here in town at Neurocrine and had a wonderful experience, loved the company and the culture and the team. And so I moved to San Diego full-time in 2016 to join Neurocrine in their commercial group, did a stint there doing new product planning, eventually left Neurocrine, followed some of my colleagues to a company called Halozyme, which of course is a well-known San Diego company. And while I was at Halozyme, I served in a business development role working under, at the time, a first-time CEO named Jonathan Lim, who actually is from San Diego, went to La Jolla High School. And I really enjoyed Jonathan's leadership style, how he treated people, how he guided the organization. However, after 3 years at Halozyme, I was recruited away to become head of business development at Fate Therapeutics, yet another San Diego success story. Fate at the time was a venture-backed company. And so I worked at Fate as head of business development for a couple of years. But while I did that, I stayed in touch with Jonathan Lim, who after 7.5 years as CEO of Halozyme, eventually left there and decided to start his own family office venture fund here in town called City Hill Ventures. And it was Jonathan's initial foray into venture. I was interested in learning more about venture, so I actually offered to help him get his fund off the ground and just help with any analyses he might need as he was evaluating potential business opportunities, investment opportunities. So Jonathan made me an operating partner in his fund, and we eventually formed the company Ignyta together. So I joined Ignyta as the second employee when it was still private and had just a couple $100,000 in funding. And eventually, this is 2011 that we wrote the business plan. 2012, I joined. In 2013, we took Ignyta public through a reverse merger. We acquired some precision oncology assets and began developing them in global clinical studies. And if you fast forward 4 years later, we had a pipeline of 4 clinical stage targeted therapies, including a lead program that had successful readouts in pivotal studies for 2 molecularly defined cancer indications. So at the end of 2017, we were acquired by Roche Genentech due to the success of our lead program. And both Jonathan and I, along with others in the team, stayed on for about a year to oversee the integration of Ignyta into Genentech. But once that had been successfully completed, we all freed up to pursue our next paths in our careers. And so at the end of 2018, Jonathan joined Arch as a venture partner, along with launching his own next company called Erasca, which is also here in town. As Jonathan joined Arch as a venture partner, he was familiarizing himself with the Arch portfolio and trying to figure out where he might be able to add value. And he saw this new company being incubated that is now Boundless, and he thought it was the most exciting cancer biology he'd ever seen. And so he volunteered to become the chairman of the board of this nascent company. And so he did that at the end of 2018. And in early 2019, he told me about the company and said, Zach, I think this is a really exciting opportunity with wonderful homegrown San Diego science, really great people as scientific founders, and Arch is committed to supporting this. So would you like to come work with me again as a CEO? And for me, it was a no-brainer because it was really exciting to get involved with cutting-edge science here in our own backyard with the commitment of such a premier investor like Arch. So I joined in May of 2019. In June of 2019, we raised a $46 million Series A investment that was led by Arch, co-led by Jonathan's fund, City Hill Ventures. Also significant participation from a local San Diego-based investor called the Boxer Group of Tavistock. They are leaders in precision medicine investing. We also had investment from Alexandria Venture Investments, part of the Alexandria Research Real Estate Group. So a lot of local support. And over the course of 2019, I began to build a team, including hiring several of my former Ignyta colleagues. Meredith Wesley, who's a member of my management team, is our head of HR and has been instrumental in building out the team. Jason Christensen served as our initial chief technology officer for a couple of years and helped us build out a platform. We hired Tony Pinkerton, who was head of chemistry at Sanford Burnham Research Institute. Later in the year, we hired Chris Hassig, who is now our chief scientific officer, but who also had studied at UCSD, had worked at Calypsis here in town, had worked at Sanford Burnham. And then more recently this year, we've added to the team Shailaja Kasabatla, our head of translational development, who has spent several decades here in town at Celgene and BMS. Before that, the Genomics Institute of Novartis. And then most recently, we've hired Neil Abdalian, our Chief Business Officer, and Jessica Owen, our General Counsel, both from the local company Cidera. So with that management team of 7 people, we also have a staff of about 50 employees overall, almost all of whom are from San Diego, many of whom came directly out of UCSD or Scripps from the labs of our co-founders. So that tells you a little bit about kind of the scientific origin of the company. Other folks in town who played a critical role in getting Boundless off the ground and getting it to where it is today. Latham and Watkins here in town is our outside counsel, led by partner Cheston Larson. We negotiated a license from the Foundational Intellectual Property from UCSD. So we worked with a local attorney at Cooley named Jane Adams, and we worked very closely with the Office of Technology Licensing at UCSD, a gentleman named Brendan Daly, who reports into the head of the office, Donna Shaw, and they were both instrumental in leading to our license. We also have intellectual property counsel from Wilson Sonsini, led by Mike Hostetler. We have auditors from KPMG, led by Jerry Schmidt. Our bank is Silicon Valley Bank, led by Mike White and Anthony Flores. By the way, these are all San Diego folks who I'm mentioning. Our landlords in our initial facility here up on Torrey Pines are Healthpeak. We are soon to be moving into an Alexandria facility, so I've been working closely with Dan Ryan and Brett Gossett on that. And finally, one of our scientific advisors is a gentleman named Mike Varney, who was head of R&D for many years at Genentech, and then recently relocated back to San Diego with his wife and is helping advise multiple local companies. So it kind of gives you a sense of multiple different folks, and I'm sure there's others I haven't named, but within the San Diego ecosystem who have helped get Boundless off the ground. We also have one additional scientific founder and scientific advisory board member from UCSD, a gentleman named Prashant Mali, who is an expert in CRISPR screening technologies. So over the past 2.5 years, with the 50 people that we have at Boundless, we have built out a platform capability called Spyglass that allows us to interrogate the role of ecDNA biology in driving cancer growth as well as resistance to therapies. As we've built out that capability, we've begun to understand some of the vulnerabilities associated with ecDNA biology in cancer, and we have deduced specific points for therapeutic intervention where we can pharmacologically impact the life cycle of ecDNA such that we can render ecDNA dysfunctional in cancer cells and no longer allow them to employ ecDNA to grow and become resistant. And so where we are now at the end of 2021 is we have identified and validated 4 distinct cancer targets. We have drug discovery efforts underway against each of these 4 targets. These are all small molecule chemistry approaches that we're currently advancing. We are close to nominating our first development candidate. We hope to do that by end of this year. And then the plan would be to march toward our first IND submission by the end of next year. That is our goal, so that we can begin human testing of our novel cancer therapeutics in early 2023. And ultimately, of course, hope to have a really meaningful impact on the lives of patients with cancer with novel approaches that are fundamentally distinct from anything else being developed by the industry right now. So overall, I think Nick started with his emotions about being invited to speak. I think my emotion is really just pride, and it's not self-pride by any means. It's pride in San Diego and the quality of science that is emanating from our institutions, the quality of talent and people that are graduating or getting their PhDs or postdoc experience here in town, the quality of the broader ecosystem, the investors, the auditors, the attorneys, the people in the business offices at the academic institutions, the landlord, all of them are essential to building a successful company here in town. And I think the industry has just come so far in the 15 years that I've been here, and there has never been a better time for entrepreneurs to grow biotechnology companies in San Diego, and ultimately to develop really meaningful therapeutics that can improve lives. So just super excited to be part of the San Diego community, and I think the future is very bright for all of us here. Ruben, back to you.
Wow, Zach, I want to hang out with you and have a beer or two. That was another very inspiring story. And, you know, you were hitting definitely all the right names, right? Wilson, Sensini, Latham, Cooley, the companies that you worked at, Arch, Ignita, Fate, Hallusheim, definitely all of them great companies. I'm proud to say that I stole Brendan Daly into my team when I was at UCSD from another department at UCSD. So I'm very proud that he worked with you in that deal. And Donna is just phenomenal. She's a veteran. She's a super, you know, expert on technology licensing. And thank you for recognizing the roles. You know, what I found common between your presentations is that both of you are working on areas, technological areas that people didn't predict would exist or would provide a technical way to solve significant problems that we have. And that was leading to my question for you, Nick. I want to have a question to Nick, and I don't know if this relates to some of the things that you've also heard, Zach, but Nick, you mentioned that one professor told you, you cannot do this. This is not possible, right? And for me personally, when somebody tells me you can't do this, well, that's one of the biggest motivators for me personally. I know different people react different ways, but can you tell us a little bit can you share why the professor think you can do this? Was it there wasn't technology at the time available to do it? There wasn't the analytics? What was it that the professor thought was not possible?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that when you hear you can't do something, that's the best way to make someone do it if you tell them it's not possible. So that was a big motivating factor. And with that particular professor, he was an expert in electrical engineering and RF signal analysis, and he knew the data that we were looking at very well for a long career. And he said, I've been looking at this data my whole career, and I don't think you can get accurate people estimations or understand how people move about in the space, because it's not like we can say, oh, I see 20 Bluetooth or 20 Wi-Fi signals in a space. That means there's 20 people. It's some people have 5 devices on them. Some people have 1 device. Some people have no devices. And so I was starting to describe to him how our AI algorithms actually figure out, take so many different variables, some variables that aren't even, you know, the signals that we're seeing, but our own sensors communicating to each other and measuring the noise in their signal communication. Because when a room fills up with people, our bodies are all like big bags of water, and that signal communication changes. And so, you know, he was familiar enough with the space to really know what he was talking about, but we had invested in this very narrow solution for, at that point, you know, a year or two, and we'd actually developed something that was currently working. But, you know, it's hard to say exactly why he didn't believe that we could do it, because it was working. But it definitely lit a fire in my belly to prove him wrong and show that we can really scale this up.
Well, it does sound like it might have been related to, you know, his lack of awareness of the new analytics systems and AI algorithms that you were developing, right? So what you just mentioned, the interference of the human body and the signals, that is actually something really interesting and something that it wouldn't occur naturally to someone to include into an AI algorithm to determine the occupancy. So that's fascinating. I have a couple of questions for each of you. Before I go to Zach, I have a specific question about ecDNA, but Zach, have you ever been told there's no way this extra chromosomal DNA technology is going to be able to solve cancer? Have you encountered that or not?
I don't think we've been told that it won't work. I think when we raised our Series A, of course, there were investors who decided to participate and take that risk, and there were others that did not. And so I think the question at play at the time was, yes, this science looks interesting and intriguing, but is it real? And more importantly, is it tractable? Like, can anything be done about it? And so, those that didn't choose to participate in the Series A wished at least to stay on the sidelines and make us prove it. And that was the progress we made from June of 2019 till about February of this year when we raised the Series B, was demonstrating after we built out a platform that indeed with early tool compounds and early understanding of biology, that we could intervene and make a difference on the ecDNA biology, and that was having an impact on tumor cell growth. And so it was by discharging that risk that we were then able to raise the Series B at a new valuation. And then the folks that came into the Series B are now kind of investing in the question of, can you make drugs? And so that's what we need to demonstrate next, and that will lead to, of course, our next financing.
This is fascinating. My personal scientific background is on transcriptional regulation and regulatory elements in DNA, so I'm going to be following very closely your work. Zach, just very quickly, are there any other companies working on ecDNA as a means to treat aggressive cancers, or are you guys leading the pack? What's going on in that space?
Yeah, to our knowledge, there are no other companies dedicated to ecDNA. Certainly big pharma has demonstrated interest in what we're doing. We don't really detect that any of them have devoted groups working on it yet. I think they are more likely to wish to work on it with us in collaboration. There are other academic sites throughout the world that are beginning to work on ecDNA. And one interesting thing is that at the end of 2020, the National Cancer Institute and CRUK, they declared a list of what they call cancer grand challenges that are somewhat reminiscent of when, at the time, Vice President Biden had his Moonshot initiative with respect to cancer. But NCI and CRUK named 9 distinct topics that they think are the cancer grand challenges of 2021, and ecDNA is one of those topics. So it's nice to see that the broader community is recognizing the importance of this biology, and we are very proud to be the company at the lead of the pack.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I have a question for Nick and a question for Zach as well. So Nick, the question is, would you say Occupace's experience with UCSD and its company support program was typical for a student company experience or more unique given the nature of their product and UCSD's interest in using their product? So did you have an advantage over other similar peers just because UCSD was interested in you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I hadn't thought about it too much. I'd say, every student has those facilities open to them. Anybody can go and apply for the basement and these different programs and work with UCSD, and they'll get a ton of great help. Maybe we were a bit unique in the way that, UCSD didn't just want to help us develop this, but they actually wanted to be our customer. So that was a pretty, probably lucky situation that we found ourselves in, because a lot of times it's hard to get funding unless you actually have, even at the seed stage, unless you have some amount of traction and paying customers, it's hard to get some funding. And so getting UCSD to be our first customer was a catalyst to get our seed funding, which allowed us to do this full-time when we graduated. And so if we were building a product that UCSD didn't personally see value in, then things probably could have gone a little bit different. But everybody does have access to those resources, and that help.
I wanted to chime in after your answer because I can strongly support that. Having been at UCSD and now at the University of Southern California, I can tell that both have extraordinary programs to support student-based entrepreneurship, open to anybody who, has some requirements is to be affiliated with the universities or to have some team members that are part of the university. I never saw any preferential treatment of one team over the other just because their products were going to benefit the university. I've actually been very inspired by the boundless, limitless innovation that undergrads, bring to the table, and it's very inspiring. One question for Zach, and then we're going to wrap it up, because the next session is actually a welcome from Mayor Todd Gloria. I invite everybody to stick around and watch that introduction, which that leads into our investor discussion. So Zach, the question is, what unique challenges do you think life science therapeutic startup companies face in getting off the ground? And what was great and not so great about having TIE's interactions with the academic tech transfer offices? I think this is a fair question. What's great, what not so good about working with tech transfer, and what are unique challenges for life science therapeutic startup companies in getting off the ground, given your extensive experience with them? So it's 2 questions, maybe 3 questions there.
Sure. So I think historically, one of the biggest challenges for getting life sciences companies off the ground is access to capital. And I think San Diego in particular suffered from that for a while, because we didn't have critical mass of investors located here in town, at least for my first 10 years of living here. I think that has changed and improved drastically over the last 5 years with the success of the industry. I think just broadly, there's better access to capital, and I think here locally there is as well. And there's been investors who here in town who have succeeded, like Tavistock, like City Hill Ventures. There have been investors who have moved here to town, prominent folks from Versant and Fraser, among others. And then there's been just the San Diego success stories, companies like Receptos, Ignita, Synthorix, Velos Bio, Vividian, I'm sure Aragon, Saragon, there's others I'm not naming. So all of that together has made it such that San Diego entrepreneurs with good stories, I think, can have a higher success rate in raising capital. One of the challenges right now is because there is so much capital and so many companies being formed and growing, is there's now a lot of competition for talent. And so probably the biggest challenge for us over the past year has been recruiting new talent, just because for any one qualified candidate, there might be 5 high quality companies seeking the services of that individual. So that's one of the real challenges right now. In working with the UCSD Tech Transfer Office, I found Brendan and Donna to be fair brokers, straight shooters, so transparent, I think, well-founded in their opinions. There's always going to be disagreements as to what's best. When you're trying to negotiate a license, sometimes there's kind of disparate views, or even for some things, there's a zero-sum game. So there's always some challenges in negotiation. I think also what can be challenging is the maybe misalignment in terms of importance or urgency, because for a company, any given license, particularly a foundational license, might be the single most important thing to that company management team at that time, whereas to an Office of Tech Transfer Licensing, it could be one of 30 things they're working on, or maybe more. Ruben, you would know better than me. And so I think there's a different sense of urgency.
About 120 licenses a year, up to 140 a year. And you're right, that's a very common challenge. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to give you a warning. We only have 30 seconds left, because we want to give an opportunity for others to join to the other session.
Yeah, so I think I'll just end there then, that sometimes there's a different urgency and even just a different pace of getting things done in an academic setting versus an industry setting. So that's something that teams have to manage through.
12 years of corporate experience in Becton Dickinson, Merrick Millipore, and then coming to the academic world, it's a big change. It's been a real pleasure, Nick and Zach. We're going to wrap it up, and we're going to end this session. I am very thankful for your participation and your message. We want to hear the next session. Please stick around and use the Whova app. Anything you want to say?
Thank you, Ruben. Thanks, Zach. And thanks, everybody.
Likewise. Thank you to
guys.
everyone. Thanks, Ruben.